Welcome to the next part in our discussion, looking at what does God want me to do today. Okay, I've got another question in. Steve Evans. Good evening, Steve. Always good to have a question from you. Just to clarify, last week there was a comment that came in about how big your wife's bum looked in something. That was actually from Steve. That wasn't from Amy. I just want to clear that up. We only got a message in saying it was from Steve after we'd gone off air. So that was Steve and not Amy, just clearing it up. Steve is off the track of how big does my bum look in this. And he says this. Good evening, both. If we pray for something such as a job, and we are then offered that job, but not on the same salary or terms we anticipated, are we going against God by turning this down after he actually answered our prayer?
I think it's very difficult to comment. I think all explanations are possible. I think there are times where God says, I want you to say no to an open door. So I always worry, there are sometimes people say, you pray, and if you get offered the opportunity, then you must take it. I think there are times when God says, the door is wide open, but don't go through it. And that's about having a confidence in trusting our sense of peace about something. Equally, I think there are times where God says, I don't want you to make a decision based on money. And that, yes, something may cost, maybe salary may be less than was expected. So I don't think I can comment either way. I think either explanation, there might be that God says it doesn't matter about the money, I've offered it to you, or it may be that God says it doesn't matter, you've been offered it, you need to turn it down. I think it's more about trying to work out how we hear God's voice. And so if we unpack that a bit, because that's, it's more tricky. It's more tricky. When I'm trying to work out what God is saying, I'm looking for some things. One of the things I would be looking for is a sense of persistence. Is a sense that I should turn this job down or that I should take the job. Does that just keep coming at me from different angles and in different ways? If I sleep on it, if I ask other people, if I make one decision, do I instantly feel very uncomfortable and want to change my mind? So these are the kind of things I'm saying to God, Lord, will you show me what to do by keeping this persistently in my mind, by keeping other people referring to it or hinting at it, maybe looking into Scripture and seeing, is there something that the Bible is saying? Is there a story I've read, a passage I've read recently that's relatable to this? And if we don't know what God is saying, which goes back to this heaven being silent, there are times when we don't know what God is saying, then I think we're perfectly entitled, and it's right, to do the most sensible thing. So in the absence of God clearly telling us what to do, I would go with common sense.
Yep.
If common sense is that you can't afford to take this job, then you don't take this job. If common sense is that you can't afford not to take the job, then you take it. So I think it's firstly saying to God, what are you saying? How can I hear that? And then at the end of the day, if heaven is silent, you do what makes most rational sense.
When I was at secondary school, I was not allowed to stay on and do my A-levels. Not because I was the best student and they would worried I would put everybody off, but because I was terrible. I was really badly behaved. And so
Badly behaved? Who would have thought it?
I know. And so I got kicked out of school, and the only place that would have me was the local college, St Albans City College, and I went and did secretarial and business studies, and messed my way through all of those, managed to learn how to touch type, do some shorthand, cheated in my business studies exam, because you could take you could take a dictionary with you, and I write all the answers in it, not proud. got first. Anyway, so I did this course, and then I became a Christian. And so then I was asking the question, okay, God, what do you want me to do? You know, what job am I to take? And so there came a job at the YMCA. We like the YMCA. And it was secretarial. It was within my skill set. So I thought, I'll apply for that. Went for it, got an interview. Interview went really, really well. They said, you're the last person that we've seen. We think we're going to offer it to you. No problems at all. We'll call you this afternoon. Walked out of there. I just didn't feel a sense of peace. It just felt like this wasn't the right place for me to be. Got a phone call that afternoon, and they said, we'd like to offer you the job. I'm like, I actually don't think it's the right job for me. Is it the money? We'll offer you more money. What is it that you want? We really, really want you. And the more they offered, the more I just knew this is not about this. There's just something not right. And so I turned that down. And then within a couple of weeks, I got a job at working for the government. I was in the civil service, which in itself is quite amusing. But it was the perfect job for me. It fitted my giftings. It was an opportunity for me to share my faith. Lots of things kind of like slotted into place. It was less money, but it was right. I just knew it was right. So for me, often there is a sense of praying again, God, what is the right thing for me to do in this situation? Sometimes heaven is silent and I have to work that out. Sometimes I have a sense. I just kind of know when something's not right, and I'll pray about that. So when I left and when I got home, I was like, God, is this the wrong thing? Continue just to confirm that to me. When they phone again, let me just know. And it just didn't sit right with me. So I think there are lots of ways of discerning, and there's no right and wrong way. But for me, that was a specific example of being offered a job and saying no. Okay, so we've talked about how can God use me today. Let's just branch out a bit to the bigger picture, to this sense of calling. So is everybody called to do something with their lives?
I think so. I think everybody is a certain shape.
Yeah.
Every human being ever made has been made a certain way by God to fit into the jigsaw in a certain way. Many, many people ignore God, so they reject that calling.
Yeah.
And even those of us who are Christians have the freedom to reject the calling. We can say, I'm going to follow you, God, but I'm going to do it my way. That's probably the most unhappy kind of life to lead. It's probably worse than being a non-Christian.
Yeah.
To say, I'm going to try and get you, God, to do things my way.
It doesn't work. I've tried it.
It's just hard work. So I think we're all called.
Yeah.
But the calling is not about, as I say, it's not really often about the job. It's about the way we do it.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want this to be unhelpful, but just in my own life, I never felt called to be a Baptist minister. I never planned, intended, or wanted to be a Baptist minister. When I was a teenager, I felt called to go into Christian youth work.
Yeah.
And over time, I realized that I wasn't really called to do that. I fundamentally felt called to explain Christianity in a British culture. If you like, our mission statement, making sense of life, sharing the love of Jesus, that fundamentally is what I felt called to.
Yep.
Working as a Baptist minister has just been the job that I do.
It's the vehicle.
To do that calling. I think all of us have a calling like that, and it's the way we live our life that's to do with being whatever our strengths are, and they may be practical strengths, they may be to do with music, they may be to do with caring for people in need, teaching, looking after children, looking after the ill, financial. They may be practical skills, but they may not be where we think, well, anybody could do my job, but nobody could do your thing the way you do it.
Yeah.
And so it could be that it's actually just about the character and personality we are and the place he's put us in. So one of the things we've done this week in our live streams is invite people to send us a photograph of what they do Wednesday at 10 o'clock. It's not too late to send us in something for what you did today at 10 o'clock. But it's this idea that that's the place God has put us, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I think we're all called. That everybody has been called this week to make a difference, to bring the kingdom of God in. Now, we can ignore that. We can absolutely ignore that. But actually, it's much easier to say, that's the way the wind's blowing. I'm going to put my sail up and I'm going to go with the wind. So God, where are you pushing me? Where are you blowing me? What will I be?
Yeah.
And that the calling is just a big phrase of saying, it's just a way of defining the big picture. So not every day am I explaining the Bible. But I know that I'm not called to be a...
Surgeon.
Sorry?
A surgeon.
I'm not called to be a surgeon. I'm not really called to be a administrator. So there are little bits of administration that I have to do from time to time. But the vast majority, I know there's no point in me trying to do that.
Yeah.
I need to surround myself with the people who are better at doing that, people who have got an eye for detail and make things happen, and let me think about concepts. So calling enables, it releases you to say, I'm good at this, and I need people around me who are different shapes, and I need to be with other people who are different to me, and I can be the bit that I am.
One of the things that happens in some churches, I mean, take ours as an example, we have mission partners. So we have people that feel this sense of called to be set apart to serve God, whether it's in this country or overseas. Many of them are overseas missionaries. And for your average person, they look at those and think, wow, you know, they must have such faith. They've got this call. They've been set apart by God to do that. And they kind of have these categories of the super spiritual and then them, and they don't see themselves in the same light as our missionaries. And I once read a quote which I thought was really helpful, and it was, a missionary isn't somebody who goes overseas. A missionary is somebody who sees the cross, this sense of understanding what Jesus has done for our world, understanding what he's done for us, and in response saying, I want to be part of you saving this world, but in my part of the world. It doesn't matter if I'm not sent to Ibiza, to Brazil, to wherever it might be. I'm actually sent in my home, in my street, in my friendship groups. I'm just as sent. But we find it difficult to get our heads around that, don't we, very often?
I think so, and I think, can I say something controversial? It's ages since I said something controversial.
You said something last week, we had Donald Trump.
Oh, I believe that to be a Christian in Sutton Coldfield is really difficult.
Yes.
I think it is really difficult. I think it's an affluent, cynical, disinterested, self-centered, apathetic, spiritually dark place.
Yep.
And if you feel called to be a Christian in your workplace, or the school gate that you meet other parents at, or the street that you live along and the neighbours that you mix with and the allotment group that you're a part of, or the care home that you visit, I think that's as tough a place as lots of other places in the world.
Yeah.
And I certainly suffered from the view that, you know, real Christians go abroad and real Christians go and do the difficult stuff in the difficult places. I've come to the conclusion that there are very few easy places in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very few. Most places are difficult.
Yeah.
And actually, I think Sutton Coldfield is quite a really difficult place to be a Christian. And I would go further and say, guys, if you are a teenager and you're trying to be a Christian in Plantsbrook or Fairfax or Sutton Girls or Veazey, you're in a really difficult place. And going abroad and being a missionary would be child's play.
Absolutely. So
we're called to where we are. And that's not to say that God won't. I can hear the emails coming in from certain. I'm going to get emails. I'm not saying that some of us, God isn't calling some of us overseas.
Yep.
He will be,
yes.
And that's important. But Birmingham is in a dark place at the moment, and it needs us.
They say that it's often harder to share your faith in the school or the place that you live rather than on a short-term mission trip.
Yeah.
So quite often on a short-term mission trip, you're all full of the Spirit. You don't know these people. It's a little bit easier to sing your song in Portuguese and to share your testimony. But to do it with people that you work with that you're going to see the next day that you're in a lesson with, and they're going to look at you like, you're a little bit strange.
Yeah.
You
Where
know.
there's no spiritual culture, and it's just, you are weird to think that.
Yeah, I mean, we love our missionaries. They do fantastic work. There is a place for people to be sent overseas. God may be calling people overseas. That's wonderful. We'll support you. We'll pray for you. That's fantastic. But we recognise that this is a mission field, and it's a hard mission field. It is difficult.
Please don't get me wrong. I am not saying that to go overseas is easier. I'm saying it's all difficult.
Yes, absolutely. So, as we're coming into land, moving towards the end, if there's somebody that's in a workplace or somewhere where their life is going and they're just not enjoying it, it's just not fulfilling, what would you say to them?
In the next John study, which I'm going to record tonight and will be out on Sunday, I'm just going to link into a verse in the Old Testament that Jesus, I think, is hinting at, which is where Micah says, what does God ask of you? And he says, he asks you this, 3 things. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. I think that's a good motto for each day. How do I act justly? How do I act in a way that gives dignity and value to every human being, that makes everybody feel loved equally, that doesn't create favorites, but that gives everybody an access to the love and care of God? And how do I love mercy? How do I love to see people forgiven? How do I love to see people who are doing the wrong thing transformed and loved into change? One of the things that really struck me about that verse is that very often people who want everything done with justice are some of the most unmerciful people. And some of the people who are really lovingly merciful don't seem to stand up for justice. And God is saying, this is the 2 things I want. You act justly and you love mercy. I think that's a good enough thing to direct most of our actions. How is it in my office, in my street, in my family? How am I going to act justly today? What is it going to look like? And how am I going to show mercy to people? And then thirdly, to walk humbly with God. Not to walk proudly, but to walk in saying, God, I know I'm not getting it right, and I know I need you. But just to say, God, here I am today. So that's what I would say and have a look at the next study in John, because we'll go into a little bit more depth. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God is a good agenda for each day. And you allow your brain to work out what that looks like and follow the moments of intuition. So it's partly God has given me a brain, partly times God gives me intuition, and I use the both together.
So you're going to pick up on that in your John's Gospel talk? So that'll be available on Sunday morning. People can tune into that then. Fantastic. We have run out of time. Is there anything that you want to say that you haven't yet said that you want to clarify?
No, except I think it's really important for people to go overseas if God calls them.
Say that. No, we do. We absolutely do that. You're not making the point that that's not valid at all. We love our missionaries, and that's fantastic. So can we thank you for joining with us? It's been fantastic to have you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care and see you soon. Goodbye.
Cheerio.